Economic instability rarely destroys wealth in a sudden, visible crash. It happens silently. Value evaporates through the rising cost of living. Data from the 2022 inflationary shock reveals a stark divergence. On the left, nominal state tax receipts surge. On the right, the median taxpayer's real purchasing power plunges. As the cost of basic goods rises, nominal wages often follow just to keep pace. When the line on the left crosses these thresholds, the state collects revenue on nominal growth that offers zero increase in actual purchasing power. Conventional macroeconomic models describe this as an automatic stabilizer. Treasury officials often view it as a natural mechanism to reduce deficits, treating price instability as a quiet windfall for the state budget. Mustapha Ahmed Ely's vitalist theory of public finance identifies this dynamic as a double tax. The citizen is penalized first by the loss of purchasing power, and then again by an artificially inflated tax obligation. Extracting revenue from a monetary illusion allows the sovereign to profit from the exact economic instability it is obligated to prevent. The vitalist framework defines taxation as the confiscation of a resource far more finite than currency. Money is simply the medium of the transfer. Every tax payment represents a specific number of days, hours, and minutes of human existence. It is time sacrificed in labor to generate that value. We can measure this specific burden using the equation for the vitalist charge. The numerator, T, is the total monetary tax burden exacted by the state in a given year. The denominator, Sj, is the taxpayer's real daily wage, representing their actual daily purchasing power. This relationship reveals how unadjusted inflation silently confiscates days of life that were never approved by a legislative vote. By applying a specific mathematical framework, the IVAI, we can strip this monetary illusion from the tax base and restore proportionality to the system. History shows that states frequently use currency devaluation to capture wealth. During the Weimar Republic, the expansion of the money supply effectively liquidated private savings without the state ever passing a formal wealth tax. In a modern tax code, this confiscation occurs when the inflation rate, the variable pi, enters the equation. First, inflation shrinks the denominator. The real purchasing power of daily wage drops as the cost of basic goods increases. Consequently, the number of days of life sacrificed expands. The taxpayer works longer to satisfy the state, even when the nominal tax law has not changed. This mathematical shift indicates a direct failure in the legal application of tax law. Legal systems generally mandate that contributions be proportioned to actual economic capacity. Taxing a nominal figure inflated by the devaluation of currency targets a fiction rather than a real increase in wealth. It also bypasses the requirement for democratic consent. The taxpayer faces a higher effective burden solely through price instability, with no parliamentary vote or approval. When two citizens with the same real purchasing power face different tax burdens because of inflation, the system fails the requirement for equality. The vitalist framework provides a correction to these distortions, which we can track by comparing a classical tax model against the IVAI. Consider a taxpayer with a nominal income of 6 million monetary units and standard deductions of 600,000. We apply a 30% marginal tax rate and an 8% official inflation rate for the period. Under the classical system, the taxable base is 5,400,000 units. Multiplying this by the 30% rate produces a tax burden of 1,620,000 units. To remove the distortion, we introduce a new parameter, the vitalist inflationary abatement rate, or TAIV. This rate is derived by dividing the inflation rate by 1 plus the inflation rate. Plugging in our 8% inflation rate, 0.08 divided by 1.08, produces a TAIV of exactly 7.41%. This 7.41% isolates the pure monetary illusion embedded within the taxpayer's nominal income. Applying this abatement to the classical taxable base provides the vitalist adjusted base. This calculation identifies the real taxable base as exactly 5 million units. At a 30% marginal rate, the vitalist adjusted tax is 1,500,000 units. Compared to the classical model, this provides a vitalist tax saving of 120,000 units. We can convert this monetary figure back into the metric of time by dividing it by the taxpayer's real daily wage. The correction identifies exactly 7.2 days of human life that would have been confiscated by the classical tax model. This dynamic remains consistent across different economic scales, as demonstrated by this graph of days restored against the inflation rate. The curve approaches a structural ceiling inherent to each taxpayer, denoted as constant K. Constant K represents the absolute maximum theoretical days of life the state could extract if inflation reached a catastrophic 100. When the state ignores these inflationary distortions to protect its budget, it forces citizens to absorb the cost of economic mismanagement directly. The state is not losing legitimate resources by adopting the IVAI model. Uncorrected inflationary tax gains meet the legal definition of unjust enrichment. The state receives higher payments without any corresponding increase in the public services it provides. These windfalls occur outside the legal process of taxation. They extract a higher effective rate without a specific legislative mandate. Ending this revenue stream restores the constitutional limit on state power, halting unlegislated extraction. Implementing this theory requires a specific institutional architecture to ensure the neutrality of the process. Step 1. An independent statistical office, separated from the Treasury, calculates the official Consumer Price Index. Step 2. The Tax Directorate uses this data to calculate the vitalist abatement rate. Step 3. This rate is published quarterly in the official journal, becoming a legally binding public variable. Step 4. The taxpayer applies this coefficient to their standard tax forms, adjusting their nominal income before the final calculation. This workflow removes subjective policy from the equation. It deletes the monetary illusion from the tax base. The IVAI framework provides the structural indexation required to align public finance with the actual economic capacity of the citizen.